All right. So, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here with Aisha this morning. We've got a great session for you. Aisha will introduce herself. If you're just tuning into the summit, we have sessions every single hour throughout today up till 3 o'clock and also through to tomorrow. So, a real treat for everybody who's interested in coaching. Now, Aisha is one of our coaches from our Coaching Crowd Business Lounge, along with the rest of the speakers. And the Business Lounge is a place where coaches are coming together to grow and develop their businesses. And this summit is the product of the hard work that the coaches in that lounge have been putting on for the last, I don't know, 6 months or so, I guess now. So it's a great community that's coming together. I'll drop the link to it in the comments if you're interested. But for now, I would love to hand over to Aisha, who is going to take us through a wonderful session. And I will keep letting people into the group. So what a great community we've got here already. So morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Zoe. So the first thing to say is I am quite nervous. I'm going to put it out there. So if you could engage as much as possible in the chat, that would be great. Questions are welcome. There are probably obvious points in the session where I can stop and answer questions. I think Zoe can probably help me out with the chat and just lead me to the chat questions if I need to look over there.
Absolutely.
Bear with me. It is a really exciting session and it really does come from the heart. So I think I'll give you a quick intro as to who I am and why I'm talking about putting yourself back in the picture today. So I am a coach, obviously, as Zoe just said, and a mum of two. So my daughters are 11 and 6. And before I retrained as a coach, I spent 23 years in marketing. So I was very much in the proverbial hamster wheel of being a working mum. 11 years of that was as a working mum. So very much 9 to 5, stress, commute, shout, stress, commute, shout for about 10 years. And it's exhausting, as any working parent will know. So I got to a stage where I basically was out of the picture. And what I mean by that is, it's a bit like there's a Pampers advert on TV a while ago, maybe a few years ago, where there are all the lovely photos of the family on the beach on holiday, and all you can see is the mums or the dads at front arm just in the corner, because they're not actually in the picture. They're always on the periphery, sorting out everybody else, putting everybody's needs above their own, which is, of course, it's the right thing. We have to do that as parents. It's a natural thing that happens. But it's very easy to slip into a pattern where our needs are at the bottom of the agenda. And every decision we make, every choice we make in life is dependent on somebody else. And that's obviously the kids, but it could be partners, husbands, work, friends, family. And we just assume that our needs don't need to be met. And that is, I think, a very slippery slope. And a slope that I was experiencing when I was in that hamster wheel, because I certainly felt that I was becoming quite an angry person, a very stressed person. My shoulders are always kind of up around my ears, and I'd have to really consciously sort of take deep breaths and relax sort of when work was finished. And I think if we don't nip that in the bud and make every effort to put ourselves back in the picture, we will just end up burnt out, overwhelmed, stressed and anxious. So the first question I would love for everybody to ask, to answer in the chat is, does anybody feel like this? Do we all feel the same? I'll give you a couple of minutes. Yes, 2 exclamation marks. Thanks, Emma. Totally and often, says Mina. Oh, I don't know. Okay, that's interesting, Cheryl. If you don't know, but you have been there. So yeah, losing our way. I think that's the thing about losing our way. I think that's one of the things about the picture is before we have children, and before we, not even children, before we have a potential change in our lives, it might not be children related. We might be on a certain path. We might have a certain career path that we're fairly happy with. We kind of have it planned out, mapped out, and we're going down a certain direction. And then something changes. So it could be children, but it could be something else. So many changes we all go through that don't involve children. And suddenly we're thrown off course. And it's that losing our way, I suppose Zoe just said it there, that then makes us question our sense of purpose. It makes us question our values, what we really stand for, what's important to us. And it can destroy our original vision for ourselves. The vision we did have is suddenly disappears and we feel a bit lost and a bit sort of, I suppose, going down the wrong path. So today, what I want to talk to you about are those three things, and that is your purpose, understanding your purpose, really getting back in touch with your values because they will have changed, and setting yourself a very clear vision where you are firmly in the picture. So now the tech will not fail me as I'm going to try and share my screen. So let's see. Right. Is that, can everyone
We
see
can
the
see
screen?
that. Yeah, looking good.
Okay. So, right. So studies show that working mothers, and this does apply to dad, I do understand, obviously it's mothers and fathers in the equation, but the study that I looked at showed that working mothers are 18% more stressed than other people. And that rises to 40% more if you have 2 children. So Zoe has more than 2 children, so I don't know what her percentage might be, maybe 60 or 70% stressed. And I think we talk a lot about self-care with working parents and setting boundaries. So as coaches, we talk a lot about setting boundaries around our work and our family time. But today I wanted to talk about purpose and vision of values. I think that's something that creates a very solid foundation. And if we have a solid foundation on which to build things like our boundaries and our self-care, then we can be the best version of ourselves. And I think if we are the best version of ourselves, we can then give the best to others. And in fact, a pilot coach, ex-pilot, now well-being coach, who I know, said it's just like putting on your oxygen mask before helping others. So that's something that obviously works in flight.
I think we've lost Aisha for a moment. Let's see if she comes back to us. Just drop into the comments whether it's my signal or whether it is Aisha's, so I can see if you guys are still connected. Yeah, it's Aisha. Okay, no worries. Hopefully it's a little bit of Storm Barra and she will be back anytime soon. Oh, looks like she's dropped out. Okay. I'm sure she is frantically stressing in the background trying to get back in. So let's give her a moment. Okay. Oh dear. Gotta love the tech. Yeah, absolutely, Cheryl. You can plan for most things, but sadly, the law of the tech is a law to itself. So, well, whilst we're waiting for Aisha, let's hear, how are you all with your purpose, your values, and your beliefs? So, drop into the chat for us, or feel free to speak up. Who here feels they've got a clear purpose? Anybody know what their purpose is? And if you do, share it for us so we can see what you've got. Ah, here she is. She's back. I was doing some good padding there. Here she comes. To support and fulfill their potential. Excellent. Thanks, Casey. Mina, to improve career prospects of underrepresented groups.
Look,
there she is.
The whole thing.
That's all right. I've been doing some good filling for you. I knew you'd be back. You can't trust the tech. It's one of those things you can't control. So just asking people what their purpose was. And we've got a few comments kind of coming in the chat now. So I'll hand back to you, Aisha. You can pick up where you left off.
Just be zen and reset.
Absolutely. Calm yourself. It's all fine.
Right.
So it's a little bit sketchy, your signal.
Yeah, it's the whole computer switched off.
Oh, really?
It's literally the whole computer just turned itself off.
Well, you're back now and it looks quite stable. So let's see how we go.
Again, I can reshare.
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. Here we go. Right. We're back.
Now let's make sure.
This will make a great story.
It will. How to we set up a disaster? Okay, I hope you can see that again.
Yep, it's all good.
Putting your optimal on before helping others. So this session is to make sure that we can get our Oxford mask back on, and we can set those solid foundations so that we can then be the best versions of ourselves and help others around us. And others, for this purpose, is family, really, family and work. I'm going to move on to the first stage, which is purpose. And there's the model that I really like to use. It's called Ikigai, and you may come for a big into it. Put a little chat. It's a very simple way to understand all the facets of our life and work, and how essentially we can balance those areas. But the nirvana at the center of this model. All very well-being, how to put ourselves first. So the first section at the top there is what I love. And it sounds simple sometimes in theory, because people say, okay, that I love doing X, Y, and Z. But actually, when you sit down and you think really about what you love, you'll probably find that you're not doing much of you love at the moment, because life is so busy, because we're so overwhelmed with work and family, that actually what we love is potentially being pushed again off the agenda. So if you're struggling to find out or to remember, to remind yourself what you love, then a good way to do it actually is to look back. So look back at your childhood, look back at your sort of young adulthood, before a major change came into your life, before you had children, before you had a serious career path that took up a lot of mental capacity. And think about, what did I love to do? What hobbies did I love to do? Where did I spend most of my time? What gave me real joy? What made me excited? What made me get up in the mornings? And that's where those little nuggets of inspiration. So for example, I loved horse riding when I was a kid. I stopped quite early on, I suppose, when I was a young teen. And I'm not saying that I want to go back to horse riding, but there'll be something in that, something like, why did I love it? Was it because I was outdoors? Was it because I was with animals? Was it because I felt free being on the back of this horse? It's those feelings that actually we can bring forward in present day and think, okay, what do I actually love doing now that works for me now? And with this whole model, I would really urge you to spend some time on it. Because actually, one of my clients I'm working with currently, we've spent already 2 hours together just on this particular part of her her journey, on her purpose. So it's not an overnight thing, it's not a quick win. It should be a bit of a long game. It should be a committed, considered process. There is actually a workbook which Zoe can link to later on, where you can actually download this yourself and go through it. So I'd urge you to spend a bit of time going through this. The next thing we have then is what the world needs. And again, our instinctive view is, oh, is that something charitable? And it doesn't have to be. So for example, I really believe, I know that Zoe and Joe do too, many of these people on the call do, that the world needs coaching. And the world needs great coaching, great coaches to help transform people's lives and people's journeys. So that fits for me into that box of what the world needs. So it doesn't have to be as obvious as working for a non-profit or a charity, or it absolutely could be that. But it could be broader. So sort of open your mind a bit to that particular part. Then if we go down model, it's what I can be paid for. And that simply is, we need to have an income. Differing levels for different people, of course, but we need to have a level of income to sustain ourselves and have a life that we feel comfortable in. So what can I be paid for? And that's as simple as what could I get a job in? And then the final part there is what I'm good at. And this again I find quite interesting, because we can't be good at everything, and that's absolutely fine. and we shouldn't need to feel like we should be good at everything, and that's absolutely fine. So that part of the model is thinking about, actually, what am I really good at? And sometimes it helps to flip it down into the third person a bit, because I think a lot of us found it quite icky to think about ourselves and think, oh, I'm good at this, I'm good at that. Self-promotion can feel quite unnatural sometimes. So thinking about it in this way, what do people come to you for? What do people come and pick your brains about? What advice you like to give? What do you find yourself talking about most in the workplace or with your family and friends? And that's what you're good at. People are seeking you out to find out or seek advice from you about that. So think about it potentially from a different angle and not just what I feel I'm good at. Then once you've spent some time in these different areas, you'll see that there are various different apps and quite self-explanatory, I think. So if you ask something, well, it's it, that's your mission. If the world something and you pay for it as a vocation, if you pay for it and good at it, that's a profession. And if you're good and you love it, which is great, that's a mission. So different areas are wonderful things in isolation, but if we do something that's all of those 4 boxes, then you are close to finding actually your purpose in life, your ikigai. So you might never feel like you're 100% there, but if you can at least some 2 different areas and start to get yourself on the right path to getting there, then I really believe this model can help you do that. Give you a structure. This can feel, for me anyway, a bit up there, a bit sort of, it's a bit too big a concept sometimes to think about. So hopefully this model can just bring you back in. So then we're going to look on to our values, and I will stop at this point in a second to ask about people's values. I think, again, for me, before I did this sort of exercise, before I became a coach, values was a word that was bandied around a lot. So what are your values? What do you stand for? Again, not like quite a big concept, and something potentially quite hard to understand. So values, of course, are our core belief system. They're what underpins our behaviours, what underpin our decisions, and our values change throughout the course of our lives, depending on different catalysts and different phases of life that we're in. So for this session, talking about parenting, working parents, our values fundamentally change after becoming parents, because as I mentioned before, we suddenly have an entirely different decision-making process, an entirely different consideration, which didn't exist before. These things, these 1 or 2 or 3 beings who suddenly need us, means our values fundamentally change as a result of becoming a parent. So I think it's important for all of us to think about our values when we go through a particular change in our lives. And it's really important to go through this process when we have kids, because reconnecting with those and again feeling like we understand ourselves is a very big step to putting ourselves back in that picture that I'm obviously talking about today. So some of the questions you could ask yourself to get a feeling of what your values might be are: what's important to you in your life? And again, not just the obvious, friends, family, work, hopefully, but some of the other things actually really important to you. What do you stand for as a person? What's your life's purpose, which hopefully should come from the Ikigai model before. What do you enjoy doing? What brings you joy? And when do you feel really satisfied and fulfilled? And if you start those questions, you're going to get yourself into the right kind of zone, if you like, the right mindset to be thinking about values. So what I'd like to do now, and this will be the first exercise that you would do anyway, without overthinking it, I would love you to share your top 2, 3, 4, 5 values that just come into your mind without really thinking about it. What do you think you stand for? And it also will help because sometimes it will help others be inspired as well. Social justice. And what does that mean to you, Mina? What does social justice actually mean? How does it make you feel? What does it mean you stand for as a person? Freedom, learning, connection. Freedom was a tough one. Yes, absolutely. Learning, equality of opportunity. Good. Any more? And again, learning is quite broad. So what does learning mean? How does that reflect on you as a person? What does it mean you stand for if learning is an important thing? Is it for you to be learning? I think Flora knows obviously also be teaching others to learn. Connection, compassion, autonomy, learning, growth, respect, loyalty, and says choices. It's a great word. And actually there's a ability to design my everyday myself. And that ability, Gabby, actually, that ability to design your day comes from having that strength and that confidence to put yourself up in the picture. Kindness, courage, support, growth, and connection. Yeah, absolutely. Courage is a great one. I think courage, confidence, and there's another one from Katie, curiosity, all the C's. All of those, I think courage and confidence to give you that strength to really build the life you want to build are really important. Okay, that's great. Thank you. And for example, something that I experienced last year, because if you realize that your values affect every decision you make and every choice you make. An example I had last year was I was approached by a coaching company to be an associate coach. And I looked into the work they were doing, and I looked into the way they were marketing themselves with my kind of marketing hat on, ex-marketer's hat on. And the way they were marketing themselves did not align at all with my core values, because my core values, or three of them, are transparency, honesty, and trust. And the coaching company were essentially misleading potential clients in what they were offering. And that obviously does not align with me as a coach anyway, but also with my core values of being transparent. So on that basis, I declined the offer to be a coach. So I declined the income, I declined the experience and the opportunity, because my core values, I would not be living my core values on a day-to-day basis. So I think it's really important to have confidence in your values, and then every decision you make, you stand behind and you go forward more powerfully. And just interesting, the connection is a common value. Yeah, and I think that probably shows, given I suppose the session we're in, the forum we're in, how important connection is, and how important it is that we're part of this sort of community of people and coaches. There are thousands of lists on Google, values lists, which have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of words on. So if you are struggling to really think about what your values might be, then you can absolutely go online and have a look and have a think about what resonates with you. And more importantly, once you have your list of values, they are potentially just words on a page. So it's about how you live those values. So start to think about some examples behind each of those values. So I'll just give an example there of how I turned down the coaching opportunity. So think about, actually, that value sounds important to me. I think it's important, but why? What has happened to me in the past? How would I apply that value to a current situation I'm in, or a potential future scenario? It's about understanding really how those values influence your daily life, and again, influence decisions you make. So it's about getting a hold of those values and really understanding them. So then we're going to go into the sort of the final phase of this particular session. That's about creating your vision. So hopefully you have a sense of your purpose, you have a better sense of your values and what you stand for, and the confidence to stand by them. But then how do you create action? How do you move forward? So I personally like using timeframes to break down vision, and to break down anything actually. Step by step is how we always move forward the best way. Slow, steady steps rather than trying to climb a mountain. So if you think about timeframes, and this you adapt to what works for you. So I like to work 3 months, 6 months, a year, 3 years. I personally don't go 5 years, 10 years. Probably does scare me, but it's so far in the future. And I just think things change so much day to day, especially the last couple of years, as you all know. So I tend to work in a sort of short to mid-term time frame. I'm looking at my vision. And also, just as an aside, the way I think about my vision is it's not just tangible outcomes. It's not just about, I want to earn this much money in the next 3 years, or I want to have a coaching business like this. It's also about how I feel. So one of my visions, which is very much a long-term vision, is I want to feel calm, centered, in control of my life, happy, fulfilled, connected. We just talked about connection, connected with people. So my vision, actually, a lot of it is how I want to feel in the future, and not about particular tangible outcomes. So a mixture of both can be a really good thing. So for each of those time frames, just think about what you want from each of those areas of your life. And I've put some ideas here, but these are just ideas because the areas that you should be thinking about have to be personal to you and have to be, this is my idea and this is my life and my journey. It might not work for you. So for me, it's thinking about home and family and friends, my work and career, health and well-being, income and financials, and then sort of any other things that might come to mind. But think about the areas that are important to you, and that will, if you have a clear vision in those areas, that you will feel confident, centered, and have that foundation to move forward. And an important thing about having a vision, or actually anything, any goals you're setting yourself, is to think about, is anything standing in your way? So that could be personal barriers you're putting up. And those barriers will be things like, I just can't do it. I'm never going to get there. So all the kind of self-limiting beliefs that we put on ourselves and convince ourselves that we're not good enough to do something. So can you see already that you might be thinking along those lines? Or is there anything else that's practically in your way? So you need to move, maybe you do need to move job, maybe you need to move house, maybe you need to do something different with the kids. Are there any barriers that you can see now that you can address and hopefully try and start to push them aside? Then to give yourself real focus and real action, what's the one thing you need to change in these different areas to make things happen? So one small step you can commit to today to take action to move yourself forward. And then the final thing is, what will your key focus be for the next 3 months? So we've looked at various different areas of vision, but we don't want this to be a daunting process either. So for now, just pick one key focus the next 3 months to work on, one key vision, if you like, to work on, and think about those 2 questions above. What's standing in your way? And what's the one thing that you can change now to start to make it happen? And I'd really urge you to commit to that today, to go away after the sessions, not until they've all finished, so not to 8:30 when Zoe and Joe have done their session this evening, or over the weekend with a glass of wine. We've got a bit more time, and just really set yourself that one goal of moving yourself towards that vision, one of the particular areas that we've spoken about. Because that sense of commitment and achievement will then give you the momentum to keep going, and hopefully the momentum to work through everything I've talked about today with the purpose and the vision and the values. So thank you so much. I apologise for the RAM tech lapse in the middle. I hope it didn't affect the experience too much. I would love you to connect with me sort of wherever. The one thing I wanted to mention actually is I've got a podcast called The Parent Equation, and it's a podcast I've been running for about a year, which is a now bi-weekly podcast where I chat to working parents of all walks of life about their career and working parents stories, experiences, ups and downs, inspirations, whatever it is. And it's just a really great showcase actually of working parents, and that we're all in it together. We all have a unique experience which we can really help us with. None of us have a boring story, which some people think, oh, I've got a boring story, I can't be on your podcast. No one has a boring story. Everyone's story is interesting and inspiring. So I'd like to check out the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Join the Facebook group, which is the Working Parents Collective. That again is a space, a safe space, a space forum for working parents to come, where we discuss all of these kind of things, and I give you the tools and resources and support to help you with working parent challenges. And if you Google me, you'll find me wherever, LinkedIn, etc., etc. So I'm going to unshare, I think, if I can unshare. I might not unshare because I might turn the tech off again. So I'll leave it up there for now. But the chat is open. So if you have any more questions after that, please put them in the chat now and we can have a quick look.
So thank you, Aisha. That was a brilliant session and a great to reconnect with kind of purpose and values. And I know some people in the group are coaches and will have come across that before, and to others it'll be brand new content. But I remember at times on my journey, as a parent, needing literally to get my values out on the table and be like, right, where am I not meeting my needs? So it's a brilliant reminder to all of us of the importance of that stuff. So thank you.
We don't do it enough. I think it's so easy to slip into bad habits. And just, we carry on, as I said, in this hamster wheel with everyone else's needs going on around us. And we just forget about ourselves. And it just takes a bit of time just to sit down, as you say, just do it again and reconnect with yourself and get yourself back in the picture, and it will, you know, only positive things will come from that.
Yeah, so we've got a question from Renee. She says, what do you do if someone really struggles with their purpose? Which I think is a great question.
Because I think, again, that's what I said earlier on, purpose is a really big word. And I think purpose feels like we need to have some grand purpose in life, you know, like the Dalai Lama or something like that. And that's not the case, obviously. So purpose can be, it's just something very personal to you. So going back to the model, the Ikigai model, what do you love to do? What makes you feel happy? So just ask some really simple questions. When you get up in the morning, if you had a blank canvas of a day and no one else's needs were going to get in your way, and you could do anything you want to do to bring you real joy and fulfillment, what would that thing be? So start to think about things that inspire you, things that fulfill you and bring you joy. And then I think when I was talking about what you're good at, I think understanding your purpose, understanding what you're good at and what you could do, what you could do to other people potentially. So an exercise you could try, you could write a bio about yourself in the third person. So rather than saying, oh, I'm good at this, I used to do this, I was very successful in my career, what about you say, Renee is a etc. So write in the third person, as if someone like a journalist is writing about you for this article. And that really helps you connect with what you are good at without making it feel a bit self-congratulatory or a bit like self-promotion. So I think it's starting small, and don't make purpose into a big scary object. Just really bring it down to your very personal life and your unique situation. I hope that helps.
Yeah, fabulous. Yeah, Emma's saying brilliant session, Aisha. Katie's loved the explanation. Renee's saying thank you. So any other final questions before we close the session this morning? No. So thank you, Aisha. It's been absolutely wonderful hearing your story and your expertise around putting yourself back in the picture. Just going to stop the recording now on